Hello, everybody, and welcome to the entertainment headquarters, and welcome to my segment, Television Chronicles. So, this segment on the channel is dedicated to all things on television and shows on streaming, and there's no better way to do this by talking about a show that I've enjoyed from the very first season. And it's a show that is nothing for me but a nostalgia ride into my youth. And the show I'm talking about is none other than Cobra Kai. So, Cobra Kai season 6, part 3 is finally landed on Netflix a few weeks back. I've just had time to watch, all of the season. I've started, from the first part, second part, and then finished obviously the third part today. I didn't really want to watch them in parts as they were airing. I thought I'd wait till they all hit Netflix and just, do a full season watch. So that's why it's taken me some time to get to this review. But what can I tell you about Cobra Kai? For me, Cobra Kai, like I say, it for me is a nostalgia ride into my youth growing up. I remember the first Karate Kid, and we had Rocky. We remember what that was about. This guy who was just trying to make a life for himself and climb the ranks to become a world class boxer. And for me, even though this isn't on the level of Rocky, um, the Karate Kid had a similar vibe for me, except it had 80s music, the 80s clothes. It's aimed, I guess, at young adults. And for me, I loved it. I loved the Karate Kid. The first two are my favourites. The third one's a mixed bag, and the fourth one, the next Karate Kid, I can, come or go with it. And then they have what I thought was just a direct reboot with Jackie Chan playing Mr. Miyagi. But it turns out he wasn't playing Mr. Miyagi because he's playing a completely different character. And now that Cobra Kai has come to an end, we are now moving on with a new movie called Karate Kid Legends with Daniel LaRusso's character from continuing his journey from Karate Kid, Cobra Kai into this new movie. As for Cobra Kai, for me, as always, this was a show that was the first 3 seasons for me were the best. They had a strong story arc that give you characters that you gelled with. And then once for me, they introduced the character of Terry Silver, sorry. Once they brought back Terry Silver, that for me is when things got a bit OTT. It's where the plot kind of changed and each episode became more like a soap opera. Each episode had a cliffhanger. Each episode had to have something shocking, but it still had that cheesiness and that kind of nostalgia-ness from the 80s, and just an all-out good show. And the thing with Cobra Kai, it is cheesy in many ways, but it's good cheese. It's like that kind of cheese that they tell you not to eat, but you cannot help but eat it, even though it's not good for you. That's the kind of cheese this is, and you enjoy every munch of what Cobra Kai gives you. To go into Cobra Kai, let's take a little look at what season 6 has to offer us.
Fighting so long against each other, with each other, it's hard to keep track.
The training, the tournaments, the rivalries, the lessons. It hasn't always been smooth. But after all this time, we've built something together to be proud of.
So let me ask you, do you have one more fight left in you?
Outstanding. Such an amazing music score. Just a great show in general. So Cobra Kai season 6, basically it's the culmination of all of the events coming to one final battle. You know, the ups and downs with Johnny Lawrence, and the life and the path he took many years ago after losing to Daniel LaRusso, and Daniel LaRusso's life skyrocketed. He had this amazing life, built an empire, this business empire, had a loving family, daughter, son. Johnny Lawrence, his life went down a tumultuous path. Many ups and downs, lots of issues with the law, drinking heavily, losing his wife, you know, not really being a true father to his son. And through rediscovering the world of Cobra Kai and karate, and meeting Miguel and his mother, and teaching him the ways of karate, he was able to find that inner discipline and kind of give him a bit of peace and drive and something to fight for, something to live for. And then obviously Daniel LaRusso comes rushing back into his life, and it comes down to them, you know, the old rivalry was reignited. John Kreese come back, then Terry Silver come back. We're introduced to, you know, a load of legacy characters from the first season to this season. It was just a thrill ride, and now it's all come up to the Saikai World Karate Competition. The Saikai Taikai competition, where you've got Miyagi-Do and Cobra Kai, and I believe the third one was the Steel Dragon, which was the third dojo, which is introduced in the beginning of season 6. So here are your 3 amazing senseis. You have Daniel LaRusso, Johnny Lawrence, and Shozen from Karate Kid 2, who I honestly thought when they brought him back, they would have made him a villain. They would have made him jealous of Daniel LaRusso's success. But no, he kind of, before it even began, he had already redeemed himself and already became a good guy. And there, of course, is the team of the Miyagi-Do. And then, of course, we had John Kreese, who had his lovely, I guess she was the young girl who grew up under his sensei and who really wanted to take over from her grandfather. She is Sensei Kim, I believe. And then, of course, you have, was no surprise this was going to happen, Terry Silver returns and bought himself a new dojo, which I believe is called Steel Dragon or Iron Dragon. I forgot off the top of my head. But the thing about this show, we know the story of Daniel LaRusso. We knew his story arc. We knew what had happened. He succeeded in life. Johnny Lawrence didn't. And, you know, he kind of had like a redemption arc at the end of Karate Kid by, you know, him and LaRusso kind of calling a truce, and then the events that took place in the car park at the beginning of Karate Kid 2. Like I say, very similar vibes to Rocky in Rocky 2. But the difference is what happened with Johnny Lawrence, it affected him tremendously. He already had a crap upbringing. He had a horrendous stepfather, which were discovered throughout the show. of Cobra Kai, he had a failed marriage, and it all stemmed from him not having that support system and that anchor and that father figure. And that person should have been John Kreese. And so that was his story arc. The LaRusso arc is all about Mr. Miyagi. We discovered that we think Mr. Miyagi potentially has killed somebody, and all that he's taught Daniel throughout his entire life, all of this Miyagi-Do, it's really just a lie. It's just a lie. That's what he believes. He believes, he's conflicted with his emotions and his feelings, and we'll discover the end result of all that as the show progressed. And then as, the likes of Miguel and, all of the members of Cobra Kai, the young cast members, and Miyagi-Do, they've all got their own kind of intertwining teenage, grown, coming of age storylines. Some of them I found really I connected with. Some of them I thought, the way the story arc kind of came to an abrupt end was kind of just quick for quickness, or the added certain elements of the stories just to basically be time fillers throughout the course of the show. And that's something that I found really kind of, not frustrating, but I kind of thought to myself, what was the point of, bringing certain characters that disappeared back? Why did we bother, going down a certain road with certain characters? Like, for example, when they're doing, the selection process to get them to the Tai Kai tournament, and you had the guy, he shit his pants, and it was all a trick, so somebody else could take his place. And it basically ended abruptly, where she was quickly forgiven for what she did to him, and then that was the last of them you kind of seen. And I understand why they did those storyline elements and made a quick ending. It's because you have only so many characters to focus on. And the main characters that they were focusing on were Daniel LaRusso, Johnny Lawrence, John Kreese, Terry Silver, Miguel, Tori. Tori was I loved Tori's arc in this story. She started off as a very troubled young woman who had a lot of anger issues, bitterness, and she followed bad advice and followed the wrong people. And the next thing you know, she kind of redeemed herself. Well, she redeemed herself like the season before. But then she suddenly, she becomes a stronger figure, and her increased relationship changes, and, her and Robbie's relationship really blossoms in this. And I love Robbie's kind of storyline and sacrifices in here. Miguel's storyline, his started off very strong, and then him going on to win this Tai Kai Saga for Cobra Kai of all places, but it's like a full circle moment because it's where he started. I just love them elements. Same with Tori. Tori deserved to win. And Samantha Russo, Sam, her character arc for me, it kind of dropped off the map. Her story arc for me was the weakest of all of the characters for the final season. The strongest storyline, and the one that it is all about, and the one it should have always been about and has always been about, is Johnny Lawrence. Johnny Lawrence, who had lost everything, and you had lots of flashbacks throughout the season of him a down and out, like season 1 to now. There he is sitting at his mother's graveside drinking a bottle of whiskey, just feeling absolutely sorry for himself. So, this series, this whole story arc is always been about Johnny Lawrence. Daniel LaRusso's had his shining moment. Daniel LaRusso has had his moment to shine. We had 3 films. This was a nostalgia ride for that character to see where he came to after the events of the last Karate Kid he was in. But we never really got to see what ended up being Johnny Lawrence. And when the season started, he was in a very dark place. And to see where he comes to and to see where he gradually, the place he reaches, it's a beautiful moment. It's a beautiful moment for him to have gone through all the trials and tribulations and to have kind of this anchor around him, these emotions that he's struggled to fight that have controlled his life up to this point. And then he finally meets the student McGill. He meets his mother, they fall in love. He's now going to be a new father again. He has a second chance. All of the past is, these past issues he can now put aside and move on, except for one. In his last moment, in his last final peace of mind, to finally release that anger and that doubt and that frustration, and is to finally open up and to tell the one person he looked at to be his anchor, to be his saviour, to be his father figure, was John Kreese. And the fact that from season 1 to this moment, there was always this tug of war, there was this tough love element. And I really think from the John Kreese we met in Karate Kid season 1, Karate Kid film 1 to now, they actually made him I wouldn't say an anti-hero, but a villain who had his own redemption. And from where we took with, from Karate Kid to season 1 to 3, I never thought John Kreese could ever be redeemed. But it's fast-paced. It's done in quite a quick fashion. The demise of John Kreese and, of course, Terry Silver. But for me personally, it was the final chapter for even their characters, their intertwining relationship in story arc. They, met at war. They met on a battlefield and they died on a battlefield, technically, in a symbolistic way. They both fought and died fighting the final battle, which was great to see. But prior to that happening, we had this amazing moment. Johnny Lawrence finally allowed all of it out. He finally released his anger. He finally allowed those emotions to be released. And due to all of that, he was able to move on. But he still had that little bit of doubt. When the last part of this tournament, there is a draw. And because there's a draw between Cobra Kai and the Iron Dragons, they have to have the senseis battle. And it's because they battled, he was, Sensei Wolf, who is amazing, by the way. Some of the newer characters that they introduced into season 6 of Cobra Kai were really, really great. Really, really great. I really enjoyed them. You had is it Quan, the character of Quan, who joined Cobra Kai in he was an amazing character. He was a lovable villain. You loved to hate him. You really, really loved to hate Quan. You really did. In the whole of season 6 is the build up to the tournament itself, the aftermath of the events at the tournament, and then finally just having those end moments, capping off the stories. You had the Daniel LaRusso storyline. For me, even though it was interesting, I found it to be the weakest part of Cobra Kai. They tried to make this storyline with Mr. Miyagi where Daniel LaRusso doubted what he had learned and what he knew of Mr. Miyagi. He just thought was it all a lie. And then you find out the story of him killing somebody at the the Saikai Taikai tournament, and then him being involved in some sort of robbery incident. And then it's finally revealed that, it not all is what it seems, and that Mr. Miyagi was only, capturing something else that was stolen by somebody he cared about. And so all was forgiven. All kind of was redeemed for Mr. Miyagi. And, the CGI used for Mr. Miyagi, when it's just a still like that, it doesn't look that bad. But it's when you see it in motion, you can tell it's not, it's not terrible CGI, but the fact that it's CGI and they've kind of used quick CGI moment, for the nostalgia-ness. I think for me personally, it kind of took something away. I wish they'd just kept his memory alive and had him out there, the spirit of Mr. Miyagi, the teachings of Mr. Miyagi, the soul of Mr. Miyagi out there rather than showing him in flashbacks or dream sequences. And for me, that kind of weakened the show slightly. But going back to Johnny Lawrence, he has this amazing moment where he finally, thanks to even Daniel LaRusso and the members of Cobra Kai and Miyagi-Do pushing him forward, he finally defeats Sensei Wolf and he becomes the champion, not just of the valley, but the champion of the world. And he finally gets to hold his own trophy. This, of course, is not from the show, but I just love this photo. I just think it's so much a great photo, showcasing the emotion, showcasing the peace within Johnny's life. And for me, to round it all off, season 6 was a mixed bag for me. An amazing beginning, a really interesting middle. Endo, the last 6 episodes for me, some of the storylines, of course, had to be rushed and had to be basically quickly written to end the show. And some of them fell flat for me. But it's all about Johnny Lawrence for me. This was the Johnny Lawrence show. This was the redemption arc. This was the forgiveness arc. This was the show that was there to build Johnny up, to give him that final curtain and that inner peace that he truly deserved. So Netflix for me and the creators of Cobra Kai have done a brilliant job with that particular character. The Daniel LaRusso character had a lot of strong, arcs throughout the show, but I feel as if the last arc with the whole shebang with Mr. Miyagi just felt flat for me. The Miguel storyline, the Samantha Russo storyline, these two young people that are going to go off to, build a life together was a great ending. Tori for me, her story arc was the second one out of Johnny's that I connected with the most. And to see where she's going to build this beautiful life and to do it with a Robbie. Robbie, you know, he was a character very much going down the path of his dad, who is suddenly become, you know, a stronger, kind of more focused human being. In the fact he's got his dad, he's got Miguel, he's even got, you know, Johnny Lawrence. He's got his dad, sorry. He's got, Daniel LaRusso Miguel, a brother he never thought he'd have. To see where him and Tori are going, could that be a spin-off? Who knows? And of course, the rest of the cast of Cobra Kai all had their own little endings. In all, when it comes to Cobra Kai season 6, I don't think it's the strongest season. I think it's a great season, but I think the first 3 were the strongest because it had a more serious tone surrounded with all the nostalgia-ness. I think once you get past season 3 and we're introduced back to Terry Silver, it then goes down the soap opera route. Each season and each episode felt like an episode of a soap opera with a bit of seriousness, a bit of comedy, nostalgic vibes, legacy characters. In every episode seemed to have some sort of cliffhanger. And like I say, it got cheesier and cheesier with each season. But it's good cheese. It's addictive cheese. And I've thoroughly enjoyed Cobra Kai. And I'm interested to see where the Miyagi verse is going next with Karate Kid Legends. I'm going to have to get myself a copy or find somewhere to watch the remake or the reboot, or, you know, the side, you know, the side boot, whatever you want to call it, because it's basically set in the same world with Jackie Chan. So that's going to be interesting. But if I'm going to rate Cobra Kai season 6, I'm going to give it a strong 9 out of 10. Despite, you know, it not being the strongest of seasons, I think it was well worth the wait just to see Johnny Lawrence get the ending he truly deserved, and just to see the whole story arc come to me a satisfying ending. It felt, like I said before, like a Rocky. You know, it's got very much vibes and similarities to Rocky, but except we've now followed the path of Johnny Lawrence and not Daniel LaRusso. A bit like Creed. Creed, you know, had all of the Rocky story, all of the Rocky saga. We've now been, over the last few last few years, following the Creed saga, the Creed story. Very, you know, strong similarities there. But yes, Cobra Kai gets a 9 out of 10. Really enjoyed this show. Sad to see it go, but all good things come to an end. But it's going to be interesting to see where we'll go next within the Miyagi-verse. Like I said, Quan, interesting character. What happened to him in the show? I think it happened a bit too soon. The other new characters, I think there could be just a flash in a pan and they're gone. Whether we'll see them again, I do not know. But anyway, this has been the Entertainment Headquarters. This has been Television Chronicles. Keep on loving all the things on television, streaming, movies, all things entertainment. And I'll catch us all at the next one.